Greetings, friends, and welcome to another Trippy Food Road Trip. We're here today in Glendale, California, and we're here to see Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Now, this particular one is the original one. There are 6 in the LA area. This one was the original one. It is also the largest. It was opened in 1906, but it was only after Hubert Eaton took control in 1917 it became this beautifully landscaped home for works of art. That's kind of the attraction of it. So people come here just to check out the art, in addition to the fact that it's a working cemetery. So there's over 500,000 people buried here, a lot of celebrities. We'll get to some of those. We'll check out some of the graves. We're also going to check out some of the unique things that makes this cemetery so special. Now, these gates behind me, these are the largest wrought iron gates in the world. So they're larger than even the Buckingham Palace ones. They're twice as wide as Buckingham Palace gates. They're 25 feet high and 80 feet wide, and they were installed in 1932. So we're going to step inside. We're going to check things out. Come along with us. Now, right off the bat, just inside the gates, we encounter art immediately. So this is the Heron Fountain. Can you guess why they call it that? Well, one of the features of the fountain is a very, very special statue. Now, if you look over here, you can see it's a copy of Edvard Ericsson's Little Mermaid sculpture that was erected in Copenhagen Harbor in 1917. So the thing about that statue, the particular statue, is all copies of the statue globally have to be licensed by Ericsson's estate. Some of them get around that by altering their appearance, but this one is a licensed copy. Just an interesting little bit of art to get you started. The cemetery in general is divided up into sections. The larger sections are centered around a large artwork or architectural replica. We're going to be checking some of those out. So this cute little church behind us is the Little Church of the Flowers. And before this was built, you didn't typically find a church in a cemetery. So if you were going to a funeral in a church, you would go to the church, you would go to the cemetery afterwards for the burial. But the odd thing about the churches in this cemetery is that they're used a lot for weddings. There are several churches, small churches, we're going to check them out, but there's several small churches here in the cemetery, and each of them can be rented out for weddings or events. This church was modeled after a church at Stoke Poges in Buckinghamshire, and it was completed in 1918. The Tree of Life stained glass window inside was patterned after artwork by an English monk. The first wedding in the cemetery took place here in 1923. Okay, we are now at the Church of the Recessional. The Church of the Recessional was completed in 1941. It was modeled after the Church of St. Margaret in Rottingdean, Sussex, England, which was originally built in 1100. There's an odd little functioning sculpture in the front of the church called the Ring of Aldith, and legend has it that a couple who holds hands to the ring and repeats the vows will be blessed. Behind me right now is the Wee Kirk of the Heather, so that's Scottish for Little Church of the Heather. This was built in 1929. It was inspired by a village church in Glencairn, Dumfriesshire, Scotland. It was built in 1310 and then destroyed in 1805. It's the former home of poet Robert Burns, who everyone knows from Burns Night, January 25th, where we memorialize him with haggis. All right, now we're sitting in the wishing chair. It's an Anne Laurie wishing chair. This was built in 1931, and it was built from stones from the original Wee Kirk of the Heather Church. Now there's a ritual that involves lovers sitting in the chair and then reading aloud the words inscribed upon it, which are supposed to make their union forever blessed. Well, let's try it. It's right here. Let's see. Well, I'm not going to try the Scottish. Can't understand that at all. But it says, dressed in our best and all alone, we sit within the wishing chair, which bodes success for everyone, exchanging bridal kisses there. I'm just missing a bride. I know this looks like a church behind me. This is actually the Hall of the Crucifixion and Resurrection, and it was built specifically in 1951 to house a very impressive painting. The painting is The Crucifixion. It's by Jan Stuyka, who's also buried here, by the way. And the painting first appeared in 1904 at the World's Fair in St. Louis. Since he couldn't afford to ship it back to his native Poland, it stayed in the United States, and it was missing for years, but it was finally found at the Chicago Civic Opera Company in 1943, and it was purchased by Forest Lawn after World War II. So now you can go into the hall and see this impressive painting. We are outside the Grand Mausoleum now. This place is huge. Inside, there's a lot of works of art, especially stained glass. There's over 100 stained glass windows in there, including a 30-foot long replica of Michelangelo's The Last Supper by Rosa and Cecilia Caselli Moretti. It took 6 years to complete and shipped from Italy, and then it was debuted in 1931. There are also replicas of famous Michelangelo sculptures in there, including the Pieta, but unfortunately they don't let you bring the camera in there, so we can't actually go in there and show you. So there's a lot of celebrities that are buried in the Grand Mausoleum. That includes Michael Jackson, Gutzon Borglum, who is the artist who created the figures on Mount Rushmore, and Elizabeth Taylor. Behind me is the Forest Lawn Museum. This first opened in 1952, and it's essentially a standalone collection of unique art and pieces from renowned artists. It displays mostly bronze and marble sculptures, but it also contains stained glass that was purchased from William Randolph Hearst's collection. Some of the stained glass windows go back to the 1300s. Probably the most famous piece in the museum is the Song of the Angels, which is an oil painting by William Bouguereau. It was painted in 1881, but you've probably seen this on memorial cards all over the world. The Triumphant Faith Terrace has some large notable pieces. The first one is the Frederick Eaton Llewellyn Memorial, and it features a sculpture inspired by Lorenzo Ghiberti's The Baptism of Jesus. The original was from 1427. Llewellyn was the general manager of Forest Lawn Memorial Parks from 1996 until 1987. One wall has back-to-back recreations of Michelangelo Buonarroti's works, the marble Pitti Tondo from 1505 on one side, and on the other side, his Dondi Tondo painting from 1504, but this time replicated in mosaic tile. This baldachin from the Temple of Santa Sabina, which was built in 1422 AD in Rome, was acquired in 1926. Because everything in the church that was added after the church was built, that wasn't original, had been removed. This section of the cemetery is called the Court of David, and it's named after this statue, which is a life-size replica of Michelangelo's David. The original marble statue that was installed in 1939 was destroyed in an earthquake in 1971. You can actually see the OG David's head and foot on display in the museum. So the statue has been replaced 3 times, most recently in 2021. But in order to avoid the statue being destroyed again, the current David is made out of bronze. This part of the cemetery is called the Court of Freedom, and the centerpiece in the Court of Freedom is what you see behind me. It is a 30-foot wide representation of the famous John Trumbull painting called The Signing of the Declaration of Independence. The original hangs in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. This one consists of 700,000 pieces of Venetian glass. It's flanked by 2 sculptures on either side. One is a replica of the Republic by Daniel Chester French, and then the other one is an original statue of George Washington by John Quincy Adams Ward.
The Forest Lawn Labyrinth is modeled after one that's in the Cathedral of Our Lady of Chartres in Chartres, France, which was rebuilt in 1194 AD. But this one was created in 1997. Also, this one's outdoors, and the one in the cathedral in France is indoors. Even though some of Forest Lawn's most famous long-term residents are behind locked and gated areas, there's still plenty to find if you know where to look. So let's do some afterlife sleuthing and see who we can find. Here lies Casey Stengel, legendary Major League Baseball player and manager of the World Series winning New York Yankees. He said famously, "If anyone wants me, tell them I'm being embalmed." Well, I guess he was right. Way up there is the crypt of Leonard Chico Marx, the Italian Marx brother and the oldest of his siblings. Apparently, his name was supposed to be pronounced Chico instead of Chico. Here's the crypt of the middle stooge, Larry Fine, who was born Louis Feinberg in 1902. Along with Moe Howard, he was the only other of the Three Stooges that appeared in every film. All right, we found Joe Besser. Everyone remembers Joe Besser. He was one of the Three Stooges when they ran out of Howards. Over here is swashbuckler Errol Flynn. Although many assume he was a British actor, he's actually from Australia. He's probably most famous for his starring role in The Adventures of Robin Hood in 1938. He's said to have been buried with 6 bottles of whiskey. Anyone got a shovel? Here is George Barris. He is the designer of custom cars, or was. He made the Monkey Mobile and the Munsters coach for television. I think he made the Batmobile too. Jean Hersholt was born Jean-Pierre Carl Baron. He was a Danish-American actor on radio and in film. What's interesting about his grave is that it's marked by a sculpture of the Hans Christian Andersen character Claude's Hands, one of the stories translated by Hersholt in 1949. As an actor, Jimmy Stewart's name is the household word, but not many people know that he served in the Army Air Force during World War II, and he saw action in Europe during the war, retiring as a brigadier general in 1968. Merry Christmas, you old building alone! Jules Stein was a co-founder of the Music Corporation of America, or MCA. When Leonard Skinner sang about working for the MCA, this is who they were talking about, since MCA bought Decca Records in 1962. At various times, the MCA roster included Morrissey, Eddie Cantor, Frank Sinatra, The Animals, Annie Lennox, Tom Jones, and the Zombies. Mary Pickford, whose real name was Gladys Marie Smith, was an actress known as America's Sweetheart. She was a producer, a screenwriter, a film studio founder, but she was more famously known as the wife of actor Douglas Fairbanks. Together they founded United Artists, and she was one of the founders of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Sound familiar? Yeah, the Oscars people. Spencer Tracy was a prolific actor. He's best known for his portrayal as Sidney Poitier's prospective father-in-law in Guess Who's Coming for Dinner, his last film before his death. His grave site is remarkably simple. It's just a bench and a plaque on the wall that simply says Tracy. Walt Disney's very accessible gravesite features a tiny replica of Little Mermaid because of course it does.
Okay, we are now at the final resting place of L. Frank Baum. So for those who don't know, L. Frank Baum was the author of the Wizard of Oz book series. He was a socialist and most of his writings were social satire. He became famous for the Wizard of Oz. He was also a proponent of women's suffrage, but unfortunately he was also a proponent of the elimination of Native Americans. But anyways, this is his final resting place. There's no place like home. Forest Lawn Cemetery has the attraction of all these works of art, also these architectural reproductions, and all the famous people that are buried here. So it's a really interesting way to spend your day. Come on out here if you get a chance. It's in Glendale, California. But when you get out here, remember that it's crazy out there. So please be careful. Take care of yourselves, take care of others, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for checking out Trippy Food. If you enjoyed watching that video half as much as I did making it, well then I enjoyed it twice as much as you did. And if that's the case, you'll probably like this video right here. And if not, check out this video right here. That one's a little bit different. Either way, leave a comment down below. And be sure to subscribe by clicking on the Trippy Food icon right here. Glad you could make it, and we hope to see you again soon.